All right, folks, time for another edition of the online dinner party. Starting off a little bit late on this particular day and everything like that, but hope everybody is doing well. It's a time for another fascinating day and all kinds of fascinating guests as we get ready to talk and learn from various people about what they've got going on and all along those lines. So definitely looking forward to this great conversation and seeing what folks have on their mind and what they've got going on in their lives. And all along those lines, it's time for another fascinating edition of the online dinner party. And we'll see what folks have got going on. In this particular day, it is raining. At least it's been doing that here in Durham, North Carolina, and all along those lines. So definitely a lot of folks will be saying and seeing all kinds of great things. But rain is one of the main things here taking place on this particular day. So it's definitely been a little bit of a wet one here in Durham, North Carolina. And we'll see what folks have got going on in their parts of the world as well. So, like I said, a lot's going on. People are paying attention to the world of hockey. As a matter of fact, I know that the Carolina Hurricanes will try to seal up and win the next round of the Stanley Cup as they're trying to make it to the Stanley Cup as a young team. They won some years back, and all along those lines, as a young kind of like a team that moved to a new area. They used to be in Hartford, and now they're here in the Carolinas in the Raleigh area, and they did win in one of their early times here in this area. And of course, a lot of people are paying attention to basketball as the Pacers made it to the next round and all along those lines. And definitely, there are other teams that are facing elimination. I think Golden State is trying to see what they can do on this particular evening, being down 3-1, and the Knicks look like they're trying to win and send Boston back in as Boston is down 3-1 as well. So a lot of people are paying attention to that. They're paying attention to some of the things that are happening in the political landscape, as well as paying attention to things that are going on in various other parts of the world as well, because we know some people have been paying attention to the tariffs as well as the new pope and a number of other things in that space. So lots going on in that way. So I'm bringing my first guest, Dr. Samuel Bentel, and see what he's got going on in his world. We'll see what other folks have got happening as well. But how are you doing, Samuel, and how are things treating you? Like I said, we had some rain earlier here in this neck of the woods, and then I had some friends, some coworkers here that were doing some cleaning in my area. I think they were cleaning some of our front porches and all along those lines at this particular apartment complex, and all along those lines. It was interesting, kind of like hearing them make all that noise and racket earlier this morning while I was doing other things. And I'm going like, wait a minute, I know it's raining, but what's that other noise that's going on here? And all along those lines. So how are you doing, Samuel? And what's going
Um,
on in your
yeah,
world?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me. Indeed, in this part of Canada, western coast of Canada, it's also raining. It's been showering since morning, and there hasn't been any breakthrough of sunshine. It's just been rain the whole day, light showers in Vancouver, Canada. So it's been cool and cloudy and overcast throughout the day, and it's been going great. It's been going great, and like you said, lots going around to keep one busy.
You have no doubt. Y'all just started new leadership in Canada too, if I remember correctly. So I know
Yeah,
that
just
for a minute y'all had Trudeau, and now you
yeah,
have a new leader in Canada.
a week ago. Yeah, they say it's Justin Trudeau 2.0. So that is what the opposition is saying. Justin Trudeau 2.0. So yeah, Mark Carney is the new Prime Minister of Canada.
Okay, so and y'all are calling him Trudeau 2.0. That's his nickname and
Yes,
everything like that.
yeah, it's very interesting because he was an advisor, an economic advisor to Justin Trudeau. So um, it is thought that he was actually handpicked by Trudeau to kind of replace him, and it worked out nicely. So the Liberals are still holding sway in the capital.
Wow, so they're already excited about what's going on and all along those lines. So they're trying to figure out their next step as well.
Exactly. So much going on.
So much going on, and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do and how they're going to react, and all along those lines. So it'll be fascinating to see what happens in that space and what they do, and all along those lines. I know that you're into, and a lot of people are into this whole notion of uh, disputes and along those lines. So you've been in this field of avoiding construction disputes, and I know that even here there's been a lot of people that have had different kinds of buildings. Gentrification is a very big thing in North Carolina, and a lot of other things go on where there's construction and all in that space. So just tell us a little bit about your book about construction disputes and how people can avoid these things and how people can collaborate effectively. Because I know a lot of times people are like, wait a minute, I don't like that guy. How am I going to collaborate with him?
Exactly. Yeah. So my book title is Avoid Construction Disputes, and it's 10 principles to collaborate effectively to achieve on time and on budget project objectives. Because when a dispute occurs in a project, what happens is that there is a cost overrun, there is a delay that has occurred, that has affected the objectives of the project in terms of time, in terms of cost, budget, in terms of quality, and now it's pitting the two parties together in an unresolved situation where if it's not care is not taken, it's going to escalate to litigation, right? So there are about different stages of dispute resolution. The first stage is what we advocate is how to be able to negotiate. The two parties should be able to man up and be able to sit down together and negotiate a settlement. That will save them all the time. It will save them all additional costs, to save them prolongation and escalation of the matter. If negotiation fails, then it moves to either mediation or arbitration. And the extreme case is when it goes to litigation, it goes to the court. And that time, all money, all time, it's all spent, and everybody, it's a lose-lose situation at that point. So the first stage is we advocate that negotiate and come to an amicable settlement so that the relationship will be maintained going forward. Otherwise, it just goes downhill from that point if it's not settled. So disputes are causing billions and billions of dollars, Mark, in economy worldwide currently. The last statistics showed about $90 billion are being spent on construction disputes, and construction disputes and cost overruns have reached that point on a yearly basis now. So the industry is hemorrhaging, losing a lot of money, arguing, fighting. I mean, arguing about who is right, who is wrong, and the lawyers are having a field day with all this dispute that is going on, and the industry is losing. Contractors are losing money. Contractors are not being able to sustain their businesses, and the owners are also not being able to achieve the objectives, and the stakeholders are reeling. So the dispute is affecting all stakeholders across board. Mark, nobody is gaining in this dispute, and if the industry does not take a step back and reevaluate where it's heading towards, I mean, a lot of resources and the economy and all these budget deficits we are seeing, we can see the source of it is that people are not working collaboratively, and now it's causing cost overruns, it's causing delays, and everybody is bringing tension across board, and nobody's gaining out of it. So it's time that we take a step back and we evaluate how we contract, how we come together, how we collaborate, how we build trust between contracting parties, so that they can now work towards achieving the goal and everybody going out happy and shaking hands instead of fist fighting.
Wow. How did you get involved in this? What got you involved in wanting to know about claims disputes and all along those lines? Because I know that you're in Vancouver, Canada, but I'm hearing some of the accents, so I'm thinking that you weren't born in Vancouver. Maybe you're born in one of the Caribbean islands or one of the nations. But what got you involved in construction? Because I can tell you that a long time ago, that was a field that my younger brother thought he might have been going into, because my mom's one of her significant others who has since passed on used to be involved in construction management and all along those lines. As a matter of fact, Ron Roadfox has passed, but his family, his daughter Joy, still runs their company and all along those lines. And they're based in Atlanta, Georgia. And I think they have offices in other places. I know when Ron was there, they had offices in New York, in California, and in various other parts of the world, because they were involved in that construction management field. But what made you decide to get involved in this particular kind of work?
Well, then definitely I have to take you back, because I'm originally I was born and raised in Ghana in West Africa.
Right.
Yes. And when I was growing up, it was interesting. I wanted to follow the footsteps of my dad. My dad was in the army. He was an engineer in the army. And And when we were growing up at that time, all the boys whose dads were in the army wanted to be like our dads, wanted to follow our dads. But most of us wanted to, of course, the career was exciting. You finish, you get your accommodation, you get to go overseas for courses, for programs, for training, and for tours. So we also had that having that career and lifestyle, and all of us aspired, after secondary school, I mean after university, I also go to military academy. So I was in the process of following my dad's steps. But along the way, when I'm going through the process of going to the academy, military academy, I just had a sudden change of mind, Mark. I just had a sudden change of mind that I don't think that this path is what is intended for me. Just right, just a moment of reflection, like a moment of truth. And I'm like, I don't think that following my dad, even though it looks fun, but it doesn't look like that's where my heart really wants to be. So I told my dad, and he said that, my son, I wish you would have followed my steps, but no, you have to choose your future and cut a path for yourself. And at that time, I'd finished university. I've studied mechanical engineering, and I'd got some training in a mining company. So a gold mining company had hired me after my undergraduate degree, and they were training me in their engineering department. So I said that I'll stay there, and I'll just find out where life takes me from there instead of just going to follow my dad like a predicted lifestyle. There was nothing exciting about it because I knew what the career is about. So probably more an adventure side of me said that let me stick in the mining industry. I don't know anything. I've just fell into it, and let me see what life is going to take me from there. So lo and behold, in the mining industry, when I joined the mining company, the gold mining company, they were going to build a new gold. They were expanding the existing gold mine, a huge project about $150 million, and they needed engineers, young engineers, to come and join the team as project planners, as project engineers, to help expand the gold mine. So that was my first stint in construction management. So right after school, I got this job to work in an expanding gold mine. So that is where I got my feet wet on project management, construction management, right from school after studying my mechanical engineering degree. So we had a blast on that project. I really loved the variety of construction project management because now I'm not dealing with only mechanical stuff. Like I'm doing electrical, civil engineering. I'm seeing the whole thing come together and being operated and commissioned and producing gold. So that was fascinating for me, and I said this is where I want to be. So I worked on that project, and I got opportunity to work on other projects in the mining industry as well. Then an opportunity came for me to travel outside of Ghana to go to the east side of Africa in the Congo to go and build two new gold mines right from the scratch in a remote region, mountainous region, risky region. And as a young engineer, my adrenaline was boiling to see what was out there in the world. So that was those fascinating 3 years building two new gold mines from scratch. Mark, it was an exciting 3 years seeing how access roads are built into a mountainous area, how the mountain is taking off, the top is taking off, and you start removing the earth and building a gold mine from the scratch. So seeing how everything happens. And I was there on that project for 3 years. I was the project planner. And after 3 years, Mark, I said that I've seen enough of mining. I've seen enough of dirt. I've seen enough of excitement, adventure. And I wanted to try something new. I wanted to take a different course. So I took my bags and crossed overseas, and I came to North America, and I came to Vancouver, Canada. So I came in to study my master's in business administration degree. And after my 2 years of studying, I'm like, what is next for me? So I was trying to search for a job in Canada as an immigrant, trying to find my way. And a company had interviewed me and said, Samuel, we have a construction claims consultant position. You have a fascinating construction experience. However, you don't have a claims experience, but we can train you based on your construction experience. You can be able to use that experience to build your claims consultancy career. And I'm like, yes, let's go, because there was no job for me. So that is how I entered into the construction claims consulting field, about 10 years ago, and have not looked back because this was a fascinating field. Now, instead of helping projects to be built, you're now looking at what are the issues that causes projects from not being built correctly, not being built on time, what is causing them to be delayed. So now all the experiences I had on the side, seeing how things can go wrong, how things can diverge, how this can get off rails. Now applying that experience and helping clients be able to put the right strategies and make the right decisions so that they will be able to stay on track, on budget, and on time. And if there's an issue of a dispute, we're able to go and forensically investigate what are the events that cause the delay or the cost overruns or care, to be able to help them to settle amicably. So I've been doing that for the past 10 years. That's how I got myself. So I've not looked back. I work in the construction claims industry for the past 10 years, and I've been having a fascinating time doing these forensic investigations and helping clients to amicably resolve their dispute and prevent it from going into litigation into the courts.
Well, it sounds fascinating and everything. But we got all kinds of amazing guests, and I'll bring in some of the other guests, and some of them will have some things in similarities with you and some that are different. That's what online dinner party is all about. So I'm going to bring in Carrie Logan, and we're going to see what she's all about and everything like that. So, Carrie, how are you doing on this particular day and everything like that? You are the master of the upper rooms of human consciousness and all along those lines. So tell us a little bit about what you've got going on, because one of the things that I do on the online dinner party is we bring in people from different backgrounds and we learn from each other and all along those lines. And like I said, Samuel has been in the space of construction management, and he's done a lot of work coming from an African nation and now living in Canada. But definitely, there can be a lot of disputes and a lot of ways that even in construction, we have to learn to work together and all in that space. So what is your take on what you've got going on, Carrie? And then I'll bring in LeVar very shortly as well. And there might be others joining the dinner party as well. But share a little bit about what you've got going on in your world and in your life and with your company as well.
So Samuel is actually correct, where instead of having an egotistical attitude, I'm all out for myself, we need to cooperate and we need to work together as a team. And that's what I call adulting. Okay. Really adulting, because you can be mature physically, but you could be so immature up here. And what I do is I help people get unstuck. I help them overcome anxiety, depression, fear, grief, anger, hatred. And I take them out of those states of 3D human consciousness. And these images are free on the website, Master the Upper Rooms. And you can use this. Literally, you can use this with your kids, your coworkers, families, friends, because it teaches you where their set point is at and where you want to get them to be. So this is one image of the states of 3D human consciousness. There is anger. There's a scorekeeper. You have shame. You have guilt. There is adrenaline junkies. There's destructive behaviors. It really breaks it down in the categories of, and the key thing is you got to really listen. What are people saying? Really listen, because you want to get them up to this state where they have the courage to do something different, where they can be grounded, balanced, and centered, where they can solve problems coming from a higher state of consciousness instead of anger. Because we all know this, Mark, that when we make a choice coming from a place of anger, we usually regret it later on. We self-sabotage ourselves. We say something we wish we could take back, but you can't. And the truth is, our words are more harmful and destructive than physical abuse, because we can cling to those words, and we're the ones that water it. We water it and we water it, and it festers, and it makes us feel like we're not good enough. I'm stupid. I'm inadequate. And it's not true. Yeah. So I really help people create a more balanced life and thrive instead of just existing. And so that's what I do. And so if you went to mastertheupperrooms.com, you click on free stuff, free images, there's this information on there. I use it all the time. I use it with my clients. Like a good example, there was a gentleman that came in that struggles with being afraid of trying new things.
Right.
And like everyone, they come in and they tell me their story. And I looked at the guy and I said, let me stop and tell you where you're stuck. Literally like 3 minutes into hearing his story, I knew exactly where he was at. I said, you're at the frequency of 100. That's fear, restlessness, irritability, anxiety, withdrawn, nervousness, guarded, hypervigilant, suspicious, worrywart, wishy-washy. You second guess yourself often. You have fear of failure. You probably struggle with not being able to sleep at night because your mind stews. And you have an inability to trust other people. Is that true? And the guy looked at me and he said, that's everything I put in the notes in my phone. How did you do that? When I
Thought you had read your mind and everything along those lines. And I brought in two of our other guests. I definitely want to hear more of this story and everything along those lines. But we've got Dom Flemings, and Dom Flemings was part of a major festival, and he is a part of a great blues band. And I'm sure that even in his life, he had some of his self doubts because there is a band that Rihanna Giddens founded along with Dom Flemings and Justin Robinson's called the Carolina Chocolate Drops. And they did a reunion at the Biscuit and Banjos and all along those lines. And definitely a lot of times people forget the heritage of the African-American presence in blues music and even in country music and folk music and all along those lines. And Dom and them were very much letting folks know that we were part of this even from its onset. I think that that's a fair statement to make, Dom, and all along those lines and everything. But a lot of times people are like, hey, country music, that's a white thing, and all along those lines. But no, Dom and his folks have been like, the banjo is actually an African instrument, as I'm sure Samuel knows, comes from an African nation and everything like that. But Dom, just share a little bit about your own journey, because like I said, I was just glad to be able to go to the DPAC and see the Carolina Chocolate Drops perform again, because I do remember some of y'all's early story and all along those lines when y'all first got into the business and came out. And I know you've done some performances at one of my venues, the Hayti Heritage Center, back in the day, and hopefully we can get you to come back and all along those lines. But share a little bit about your journey, because I'm sure there were self-doubts when you told people, I want to be a folk blues singer and all along those lines. And probably people were like, no, you got to find a real job and everything like that. So Dom, share a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. Well, to just mention the festival first, the Carolina Chocolate Drops, we had our very first reunion show in 10 years as a unit together for the original trio with Justin Rinnan and myself. That was 15 years, having not played together on stage. So that was the big climax of the festival itself. And that was a great time. My background, I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. And growing up, my dad was a big fan of country music as well as R&B and soul, because he came from Flagstaff, Arizona, which is in upper Arizona, sort of the sawmill town. His parents came out from eastern Texas and Arkansas, and they were Church of God in Christ. So he grew up in a very religious household. But my grandpa was also a sawmill worker, too. So he was part of an old generation. And so my father came down to Phoenix, married my mother, who's Mexican American, and we're sixth generation natives in Phoenix. And so when I was growing up, by the time I got into high school, I'd played drums in school. I had played in the marching band, played bass drum, auxiliary percussion in the pit orchestra. But by the time I got to high school, I found myself interested in early folk music, Bob Dylan, Lead Belly, Big Bill Broonzy. And I just got deep into going to the public library and hearing some of these old records and learning these old styles of music. I got into Lightning Hopkins, Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, and just the whole milieu of early popular music. And so I was busking on the streets, performing, did slam poetry, went all the way through college, got my English degree. And so when I made my way to the Black Banjo Gathering in 2005, which was sort of the catalyst for the Carolina Chocolate Drops to form, I learned about the African roots of the banjo. I had started to play because I was a fan of bluegrass as well as being a fan of New Orleans jazz. So I had sort of a mixture of blues, jazz, and country music and folk music in my style of playing. I was brought in, I was 22 years old, so I was one of the younger participants at the Black Banjo Gathering, and it inspired me to move to North Carolina to spend time with Joe Thompson, who was the big fiddler that we sort of built our sound around, and we formed the Carolina Chocolate Drops, and ultimately we ended up being the very first all-black string band to perform on the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, Tennessee. And we also won a Grammy for Best Traditional Folk in 2011. But then once I left after 2013, I've done a lot of different work showcasing different aspects of early African-American folk song and early American music. I made an album called Black Cowboys in 2018 with the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and it ended up being a groundbreaking release that helped spark the current Black country and Black cowboy renaissance. And so I've done that, and when I put it out, it's this is the LP of it here. I brought together a lot of different influences of early Southern music and how it migrated out west. Included historical photographs. Here's the back of it from the Ammon Carter collection out in Texas, right here, of some wonderful black cowboys, and so I put this album out in 2018, and just I've continued to explore different facets of early popular culture, American life, and I perform live and present several different folk instruments: the guitar, banjo, the African American panpipes known as the quills, the rhythm bones, which are a percussion instrument like the castanets, and then also several types of harmonicas as well. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. But
That's a lot in a nutshell, and we'll get to some other conversations about it as well. But one thing that fascinated me, and I know you're not the only one, but you are a master of it. But growing up, I was a fan of none other than the Beverly Hillbillies and all along those lines. And you do play the jug and all along those lines. So share a little bit about what that is like and everything, because a lot of people will see a jug bottle and they won't realize that it can be an instrument, and a very fine instrument as well, because you did a masterful job. And I think there were 4 of you or 5 of you jug players that were there at that performance at the DPAC. But a lot of folks would be like, nah, this is what I'm using to drink my sometimes liquor or sometimes milk or whatever else they got in the bottle, but y'all use it as an instrument. So tell us a little bit about the jug as an instrument, because everything like that, because it always fascinates me anytime I see a jug player.
Well, the jug is an interesting story, because it started out first. I saw it like anybody else on like the Beverly Hillbillies or Andy Griffith when the Dillards would be on the show, and it's just sort of a fun instrument to think about. But then I started to see some of the when I got into 60s folk music, there were 2 particular groups, Jim Queskin's Jug Band and the Even Dozen Jug Band, and they featured some really great performers that all of a sudden I started to hear that the jug could be a musical instrument treated like a bass. So that was when I first became aware of that. But then I saw that many of these groups were influenced by early African American jug bands of the early 1920s and the 19 teens, turn of the 19th century, going into the First World War. And these groups, the jug bands, emerged in Louisville, Kentucky, as a result of the stonemason jugs that were on immediate supply because of the bourbon trade. And so these bands would play at the Kentucky Derby in the stands, and they were sort of these ragtag street bands. I'll say it that way. They weren't like really low down bands, but they were sort of bands that were made for open air markets, street performances out in public places like the Kentucky Derby. Down in Memphis, they had their own version of the jug band music, which was more around like what's now W.C. Handy Park, where they would play out for people for tips and whatnot. And they were sort of smaller blues bands, proto jazz bands. And all of a sudden, when I heard these early recordings of these bands done in the I guess 1920 to 1923, that area, I saw another version of what the jug could be. So, being a modern person myself, when I started to play the jug, I learned the basics, but then I started to take ideas that I heard people like Charles Mingus, another Arizona native. I took the ideas that he brought into his blues and roots albums and some of those ideas of bringing bebop into jug. So when playing string band music in the Chocolate Drops, I'm not playing traditional string band music, which is just a oompa, oomp, oomp, oomp. I'm playing walking bass lines and playing much more complex harmonic rhythms with an instrument that is very humble in its construction, but still very effective in playing it out. And so that's something that I kind of innovated with jug, because when I started out, there weren't any other African American jug players, and there was a lot of room for me to be able to extend the vocabulary of what jug playing could be.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. We think I want to get to LeVar, but then there's some questions that'll be involving all of you, because there are things that are common ground and all along those lines. But LeVar, share a little bit about your business and your background in real estate, because I know a lot of people have been paying attention, just like I was talking to Samuel on this whole notion of real estate and real estate development, and you're doing a lot of work in that real estate area and all along those lines. So if you want to share a little bit about what you've got going on in that real estate space and all along those lines, because I'm sure a lot of folks will be interested in your life as a result-oriented business and community leader, and your thoughts on the very competitive real estate industry. Because, like I said, a lot of people are glad to see gentrification. And like I said, one of the things that I do at the Hayti Heritage Center is we talk about Black Wall Street. And through Black Wall Street, there was the destruction of some very successful businesses and all along those lines with the development of the highway. But gentrification has been a conversation both now and in the past, back when the Black Wall Streets were prominent, whether it was in places like around some of the areas of Texas and Arizona where Dom is at, or whether it was in Florida, down there in Rosewood, or whether it was in New York, because people oftentimes forget that Central Park was a Black Wall Street. And of course, some of the two of the most famous Black Wall Streets are, of course, Durham, North Carolina, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. But just share a little bit about your thoughts around real estate and what got you involved in that field.
Sure. So what got me involved in real estate was actually my studies in undergrad at Tennessee State University, a historically Black college and university. But what I would tell you is that I have a unique opportunity in the Chicagoland area where I'm in real estate, but I have a partnership with the Department of Housing for the city of Chicago. So it is they have a neighborhood rebuild initiative that I pioneer, and it's a situation where it's designed to create generational wealth in urban areas by creating more homeowners, as well as focusing on affordable housing. And we have a workforce development component as well. So there are many avenues that we address, from, like I said, affordable housing to really trying to curb gentrification in some of the areas in Chicagoland. But one of the things that I would say is that it is I have resources by partnering with the city and kind of the urban plan and things of that nature, that when I look at it, when I was a flipper and kind of just an investor on my own, there are avenues and resources that I can leverage with partnering with the city that I had never imagined. So it's really been a great opportunity. I've been in the program since about 2017, and I've been doing real estate since 1999, where I bought my first investment property when I was still in college.
Wow, that's really amazing that you bought it when you were in college and everything like that. One of the things that this network talks about, and I'd love to hear from all of you, but you kind of alluded to it, as did Dom and everything. But one of the reasons that Nick Palveda and Kim Calhoun founded this particular network, Pod TV, is they feel that there are a lot of things that aren't being taught in our school system, including fiscal literacy, because definitely both of them have somewhat of a fiscal background. Nick is the founder of a pension company and all along those lines, and Kim is an engineer by trade and everything like that. But I was just wondering your take, all of you, are we hearing enough education things about some of these things that we're talking about? Like, I don't remember when I was in school, and that would have been the late 70s. So yes, I am dating myself to some degree and everything like that, but I don't remember a lot of conversation around generational wealth, which is what you're talking about, LeVar. And I also, even though my parents had one of the early community radio stations in Warren County, it might have been around the time that Dom was in school and everything like that, but WVSP existed in Warrenton and everything along those lines from like the 76 to about 87 or 88. And I know they talked about it, but a lot of other people weren't talking about the roots of our music and the roots of our history, even thinking about like Charles Mingus and Thelonious Monk and a lot of other folks like that. So I just wanted, and this is for everybody, do you think that our school systems, whether it's in Canada, where I know you are, Samuel, or other parts of the world, are doing a good enough job of teaching our youth a lot of this legacy stuff and even about generational wealth and everything like that? So I'll start with you, Don, but I definitely want to hear from LeVar and others as well.
Oh, you're laying that one on me first. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see. Well, I mean, ultimately, there can always be more taught from as young of an age as possible. I think that's something that's just hands down. There hasn't been enough education on it in general. Yes, I think there could be more. Even when I started to really study into folk music on a collegiate level, a lot of the books I had by the time I finished university at Northern Arizona University in 2005, I mean, the scholarship kind of ended out in 1978, 1979. So when I was listening to some of the types of Black folk music that I was interested in, there was no link to hip hop or rap or anything at that time in the actual scholarship. I could hear it in the music, but finding a book that talked about that type of subject matter, that wasn't anything that I saw. So even as I went into it, there are songs like I do hokum songs like But They Got It Fixed Right On, which are built on sort of the same musical ideas of different types of hip hop. Even when I'm doing my records, I've created what I call organic beats, which are like bass drum, snare drum, sort of folk rhythms to showcase different parts and pieces. And some records I have augmentation of like banjo on top of these beats to showcase the way that folk rhythm and how they can connect to music like hip hop. Because some of the songs, like many of the banjo numbers, part of the Africanisms around banjo are the counterpoint and the polyrhythms that you can create with the banjo, and how that can be used with vocalization on top of it. It's very similar to hip hop. Musically has different aspects to it, because of course hip hop is built around having a turntable, having the electronic media to augment the voice and augment the story being told. But when using the banjo and all these early types of music, the function is still there. And so just being able to bring that into the academic field, that was something very important to me. And when it comes to now we're in a situation where people are asking about the African-American contributions of country music or bluegrass. And one of the things that I do as a historian, I keep a lot of source material around. So I give literal, tangible examples, because right now a lot of the conversation is the emotions of saying we've been a part of this. But for me, I've kept the tangible examples that show how we're a part of this, like when Whitney Houston does "I Will Always Love You," that's Dolly Parton. That technically could be Black country if you want to talk about country music as country artists writing songs and they're being recorded by African American artists. But then there's Black folk music, blues, that's informed country artists for many years. Then there are African American artists like Charlie Pride, or like Linda Martell's getting a lot of acclaim now with Beyonce, who were African American artists that were standard country and Western performers, performed in that style. And all of these are valid pieces of the story of Black country music. So that's what I do. I bring in the source material so that people can have examples instead of just saying it is, and it's just showing what it sounds like, because music is emotional, because when you hear the sound, then you can find a story that sometimes isn't the direct message of the song, but it's the audio documentation that we have of culture.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, LeVar, and along those same lines and everything, what is your take? Because there's been a lot of conversation around generational wealth and whether we're doing a good job of maintaining generational wealth. I know that even in North Carolina, where I'm based, there's been people that have been in coastal towns that have seen the next generation of fishermen decided they didn't want to go into the fisherman field. And even here in Durham, North Carolina, we don't have the longest running Black newspaper, because the fourth or fifth generation, I forget which generation that they were, of the Carolina Times, decided that they didn't want to keep that paper going. So that paper doesn't exist anymore, because the next generation decided that they didn't want it to go maintain that field. There are other African-American newspapers like the Triangle Tribune and others that exist, but the Carolina Times, that family opted not to be in it, even though it was one of the pioneers in that field, even in the civil rights area, because definitely one of the founders was very much involved in some of the conversations, even with Dr. King and all along those lines. But I just wanted your take on generational land and generational wealth, and are we doing enough to teach our kids about the importance of generational wealth and maintaining that legacy?
Sure. One of the things I've seen is that in our traditional school system, there hasn't been a lot of progressive thinking or forward thinking in regards to educating the youth. However, in the Chicagoland area, what I've seen is that nonprofits have taken on some of the burden, and there have been programs like for just throwing one out here. There's a organization called RAGE. They have they call it, I think it's like a lookup program, and it champions teaching financial literacy, how to create generational wealth. I had a chance to speak at one of their events, and I was amazed three of the kids, they were 7th and 8th graders. And when I was talking to them about the real estate development business and the construction business, they were asking me questions about profit and net profit and things like that in 7th and 8th grade. So I walked out of there elated on the impact that a few nonprofits in the area that are championing the effort to teach generational wealth. That's where I see the most kind of progressive thinking and the programs that are having the biggest impact.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Sammy, what's your take on that, even from a Canadian perspective and a perspective, one that came from one of the African nations and all along those lines? But are you seeing enough of our young people that, like LeVar are saying, are motivated and excited about the possibility of going into a field like yours? Because like I said, LeVar has had that example of some people that were wanted to go in that field, and you're in a similar kind of field and everything like that. So how much encouragement have you seen of our young people, or are they all attached to their phones and not necessarily want to go into your particular work field?
Yeah, I mean, for the construction industry, one of the challenges is the inability or the lack of skilled labor in the construction industry. The baby boomers are phasing out, and there's a forecasted shortage of the amount of employees or people who are being trained in the trades, whether it's welding, whether it's being a technician, whether an engineering technician, an electrical technician. All these labor skills that are needed to build the structures that make our life better are lacking. Now the youth are not interested in coming into these positions and taking these streets to be able to, and this offer tremendous lifestyle of living in terms of the rates and the rate of pay. However, it's not attractive to the generation of today. And I think that it's been a challenge in the education system, how they are training schools, how they're training the kids. They are being put in a straight jacket, and they're not allowing our students to be authentic, to be able to discover their own skills, discover where their strengths lie, to discover where their natural talents lie, so that they will develop in that skill, in that field. The education system has given a straight jacket way of you have to conform, you have to be in a certain way, you have to work in a certain way, you have to work in a certain way. So they come out of the education skills, and their mindset, you have to be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer, otherwise it's like you've not done anything in the community. While the kid has a natural talent or skill to use their hands to build something, to create something. And that discord we are seeing in the labor shortage in the construction industry. And that education system is what is creating some of the challenges they are facing in this, because leaders in the construction industry are not being able to engage and communicate authentically. They're expected to behave a certain way. And I think, Carrie, Logan, what you talk about the upper room, it all comes from authenticity and being emotionally intelligent, so that to be able to engage the upper room. And because of the education system that is putting people in a straight jacket, expecting them to conform a certain way, when they come into the field, they are not now able to engage authentically as they should and be natural and understanding where they are coming from, so that they'll be able to actively listen to someone and try to understand where somebody else is coming from when they are communicating. And these are creating communication issues and causing some of the disputes that are being observed in the construction industry.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Kerry, along those same lines and everything, I'm just wondering, because one of the things that they teasingly say, some of the founders of this network, is that there are certain fields, and Dom would probably be one of them, that don't necessarily have a reward system in the sense of being like seen as the doctors or the lawyers or the Indian chiefs, for lack of a better term, because I know that they will sometimes joke that why get a degree and I'll just use and I'll pick on the field in anthropology, because you're not going to make any real money in anthropology and all along those lines and everything like that. So I just want your take on that, when people are discouraging folks from certain professions because they aren't, quote unquote, the money making professions.
Well, what I've noticed, I'm located in Oregon, and what I have noticed is more kids are actually looking to go into the trade industry instead of going to college, because you could get a bachelor's, a master's, and not get a job and still bag groceries for a living. And that's the real hard truth. And the cost of education is so expensive nowadays that it's hard for these kids, because they then can't buy a house because they're in debt with so many student loans, that I'm hearing more kids, and even my son, who's, a junior in high school, has flat out told me, I'd rather do a trade school. I don't want to go and get myself in debt and all of this, because then that doesn't create generational, wealth. It doesn't create those opportunities. And so I've told him, yes, there's so many great trade schools out there. Like even for me, I got certified as a trauma informed specialist. That's a trade school. There's other areas we can go into that. And what I've really noticed in the area of, the education system is we lack in a way of really helping people understand how to thrive in life. I mean, really, how can they thrive financially, mentally, emotionally, just spiritually? How can we, come together and connect more as a community instead of I'm all out for myself and everyone else can just, go to the wayside. And so I loved it how LeVar was sharing about those young people that were asking him those deep, deep questions, because that's important, because right here in Oregon, we have a huge amount of homeless people. And the homeless people that are here is because we suck in the realm of mental health. We really, really do. And so even in that area, schools are starting to talk about mental health. They're starting to talk about, trauma. They're starting to really talk about things so we can better understand one another, I would say, as human beings, because everyone is perfectly imperfect. I like to say nobody is perfect in any area. Yes, we have strengths and we have weaknesses, but it's learning to understand that. And so, like, for example, my husband was a chief financial officer. He's all about money and spreadsheets. He told me, you want to get me excited, show me a spreadsheet. And I'm like, oh, you show me a spreadsheet? I'm like, I'm going to fall asleep. I don't, and I'm like, you're great at this. And I'm great at that. And that's the beautiful thing, is really seeing what is our strengths, what is our weaknesses, and helping those kids to find the right fit for them. So I'll share a really quick story. It's like, if you've heard about Wayne Dyer, he was a very well-known person and he had millions of dollars. And his son wanted to be a surfer. Dad, that's what I want to do. I want to surf for a living. And at first he thought, oh, you're going to amount to nothing in life. But he said, if you can find a way to make money surfing, I'm all for it. If you're happy, you're thriving in life, I'm all for it. And his son did. His son actually created his own business and was a surfing instructor, taught people how to surf, and did really well at it and loved his job every single day. I have a friend that loved mountain biking that ended up creating a school to teach young people mountain biking in the Bay Area. And he loves it, thrives at it. And I'm like, yes, if that brings you wealth, it brings you happiness and joy, more power to you. So that's a really cool thing, is I think we're in a generation where we're looking to think outside the box. Like Samuel was saying, no, it has to be like this. Cookie cutter, put everyone in a box. No, nobody should be put in a box. Nobody.
I agree with you on that. Hey, Dom, along those same lines and everything, and I'm going to throw you another hand grenade and all along those lines and everything. But there is a term called show business and all along those lines. And I find that a lot of people in the field are very good at the show aspect, not as good in the business field. So as a matter of fact, one of my friends I just recently learned, was a primary blues singer and all along those lines, and is in latter lives. So he's actually in a nursing home now and everything like that here in the Durham area and everything like that. But he definitely oftentimes talked about that notion of show business and how he had to learn the business aspect of it. So as one of the founders of the Carolina Chocolate Drops, when did you and Rhiannon and Justice actually learn the business aspect of show business? And did you find experts that would help you with that, or did you find that you needed to learn some of that yourself so that you didn't get taken advantage of? So that's a very common term, that term called show business and everything. But I was just wondering your take on, when did you learn the business aspect of show business?
Ooh, well, that's a long answer in some ways. I'm going to see if I can truncate it down to something reasonable. But it actually relates to everything we're talking about because there's in essence there are two types of music. There's popular music and then there's non-commercial based music in one way. I tend to straddle the line between popular music and non-commercial music. Folk music is a type of music that's built on cultural uplift, being able to share stories that are about the people and being able to share even musical styles that are showcasing aspects of American culture that people don't see every day. So if we keep it on a very broad scale with that, there's always a line where you're trying to get the hit record that will make you money. And then there's the line of what are you doing that's the mission-based record. So if I play a song by Big Bill Broonzy and I tell people it's a Big Bill Broonzy song, I'm trying to give people a message of culture, of what's come before, influence, etc. So in its own way, it's its own type of generational wealth. So, you have to imagine 20 years ago, it was hard for people to imagine that a banjo player could not be white, because it had banjo music and country music had always been marketed just like black music, blues, jazz, gospel, funk, soul, always marketed along segregated lines because segregation was the word of the day in the United States. So in many ways, we think of the music on segregated terms, whether we like it or not. We think of a black artist sounds a certain way, white artist sounds a certain way. So a lot of my career has been reaching into that space where there are stories, there are songs, there is history that can break those sort of arbitrary barriers. Because many times musicians don't think along those sort of lines. They make music, and there are moments historically and in the present where people have connected and they have found, great love and joy together because of music and art and entertainment, food, church, social spaces, and fiddle and banjo music is about that. So with all that being said, when I went to the Black Banjo Gathering, I saw that the scholarship of African American string bands, I saw that was in its infancy. And so I saw there was an opportunity to work and find jobs and to be able to make money doing music, helping to build this scholarship up. So from day one, there was always an entrepreneurial spirit that I kept with me. And so when I was working with Rhiannon and Justin, we first realized that we could get individual jobs. Then we ended up finding that getting a booking agent would help to get bigger individual jobs. And then we actually began to work with a nonprofit organization, which I still work with, called Music Maker Foundation. And Music Maker, they're a nonprofit that works with traditional Southern artists, many blues artists, and they've built a model on a hand up and not a hand out. So they help out artists in rural communities that may not have access to the music industry in the broadest form. And they work with them, and many of them are elder artists. And so I met with the president, and he ended up putting out our very first Carolina Chocolate Drops record. And so working with he and his wife, Denise, they helped us understand that in the industry, people get screwed over often. And so their goal was to at least get us started so that we could make our own infrastructure of business. And so that's what we did, working together in partnership with them. And so that was when the larger idea of business came into the picture. Before then, it was just individual money. But then trying to make an infrastructure, that's when all of us begin to start thinking of that. And it's a music business is half a commission business and half an investment business, like a museum, where some money is far away and 2 years in advance. Some of it is commission based. So when you do a show, you get the money on hand, and then you have to figure out the way to allow your income to last a long period of time, to sustain yourself while still giving you room to do your creative art, which is another piece of it. And it's always a balance between trying to find making sure your mental health is in a place where you can still do your art, but then you can still feel like you're, able to feed yourself or have insurance or have a house and those types of things. And so, yeah, that was one of those things. It was pretty much day one that I thought about a business and a entrepreneurial part of music, because before then I was just a fan. But.
No, that makes a lot of sense and everything. But Dom, just really quickly, because there was a famous jazz singer, it might have been Coltrane, it might have been one of the other ones, that talked about the fact that they didn't like to be pigeonholed in a particular category. I think that the quote that I remember is that I don't know what the music is, it's just good music or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing it to some degree and everything like that. But what do you say to those people that want to pigeonhole you? Because when I think of the Carolina Chocolate Drops, yes, y'all are a folk band, but I do know that y'all, and you've alluded to it quite a bit, fully in various influences, whether it's hip hop, whether it's jazz like Charlie Mingus, or whether it's a number of other folks as well. But I know a lot of artists, some like to be categorized by the music style that they are into. One of my good friends is a funk musician, and he loves being categorized as a funk musician. But I know some others that don't like to be particularly pigeonholed and all along those lines. So what is your take on that whole conversation about being pigeonholed? Because I know that a lot of times, whether it's you or whether it's Reese Palmer is oftentimes categorized as a country singer and everything like that. But what is your take on this notion of being pigeonholed into one form of music? Or do you like to think of yourself as a musician that covers a various spectrum of the musical landscape?
Well, I can only speak for myself, because ultimately a musician is they're defined by themselves and the audience that listens to what they're doing. So if that's strong communication, then that's the way you want it to be. You want to make sure that your listeners are defining you as you'd like to be defined, and that you as an artist are defining yourself as you'd like to be defined. That's the best scenario. Everything else is business, and bringing in people from outside of that special, creative, intimate space of music. When it comes to industry, things have evolved quite a bit, especially with streaming. We are having a thing similar to what Carrie has mentioned, that we're having new generations that are coming along without the hangups of traditional music genre models. So, you could listen to anything, you could have a playlist, and then you're taking on a rabbit hole in a totally different direction than before. If you were a blues fan, you were deep into blues, and blues was what you did. Or if you're a country or bluegrass, you were in that genre, and that was your go-to. And to diverge was almost like its own sort of private secret you had to keep away. Like I used to remember early on with the Chocolate Drops, we would have people, there would be black people that would come up afterward, and they'd say, I don't listen to this, but I love what you guys do. See you later. And it'd be a secret conversation. But now that's not the case anymore. There are so many more people that are just comfortable saying that they like country music and all those variations. So that it's not what it once was, in a way, for that part of it. But when it comes to pigeonholing and that type of sort of thing, that's part of why I developed the American Songster for my own moniker, because the songster references back to the late 19th century, in a time before recorded music, when localized musicians played a variety of music for people. And so for me, as the 21st century has come on, I've realized that people aren't as hung up with strict genre lines. And so the American Songster was a way for me to tell people I do not only folk and blues and country and jazz, but I also do ragtime and rock and roll and whatever it might be. And in the new space of the 21st century, the songster, again, can cover over 100 years of American music, and it's not a problem, nor is it a strange notion that I can do all of these different styles.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, everything. Hey, just really quickly, Carrie, along those same lines and everything like that, and this is for everybody on this particular call and everything, this particular edition of the dinner party, how much is it difficult for people in general to get that whole notion of home life balance and everything. I am one that tries to, make sure that I have got my mental health and to some degree my physical health, even though I am notorious for eating out in all the wrong restaurants and all along those lines because of my own rush life and everything like that. But how important do you think it is for that home life balance and just balance in general? Because I know that I tried to make sure that I am connected, not just on a physical, mental, but even a spiritual and an emotional basis as well. So I just wanted your take on how important is that to have that kind of balance, and do you think we as a society are doing a good job of that?
Well, I think society is getting to a place where we now realize we do need to live a more balanced life. And why I say that is you could be a chief financial officer of a company and you're great with your financial income, money management, saving and investments, financial freedom, peace of mind, all of that. But you're so disconnected from your family because you're so focused on work. You're disconnected from your kids. You don't know how to have fun or how to play, how to have a weekend getaway. Like a lot of times these big executive people, it takes them 5 days on a vacation to finally unwind. And that's really unhealthy and dysfunctional. And so on my website, Master the Upper Rooms, I have under free stuff, free images, how to create balance within your life. And I break it down and I tell people this helps you figure out where you're lacking, because it's wellness and mental health, like your physical health, your mental well-being, your personal growth, spiritual growth. There's financial abundance. There's your life purpose, career, business, your hobbies. There's connection and relations with other people, like your friends, your family, your community, your church, your relationship with yourself. How do we treat ourselves? And then there's that creative flow, which is joy in life, engaging with others, friends, play, adventure, travel. How can we create a more balanced life? Because when we do have a balanced life, we're thriving. We're really, really thriving. And that's where when we can learn to connect to our friends and you have that relationship, they'll tell you, just how they're doing. If they're burnt out or fried, ask them like, hey, have you done anything fun for yourself lately? Hey, have you taken time to relax, to unwind? Because we do sometimes get so fixated or hyper focused on certain things that we're not really living. We're just existing. We're kind of going through the motions. And we have to learn to kind of stop and step back and take a self inventory on, where am I? Where is my peace of mind? Am I stuck in stress, anxiety? Am I worrying all the time and losing sleep every night? Where am I? Because all of that factors into our how productive we are in life. How clear-minded we are in life. Are we making sound, healthy, wise choices? Am I investing my money wisely, or am I just, sporadically, second guessing and like, oh, I'll try this, and then I regret it. Where really am I at? So I hope I answered that question.
No, you did answer the question and everything, but you brought up an interesting point, and it's come up on this show a number of times. But I'm going to start with Samuel and LeVar, but I definitely want to hear from Dama and you on this as well. But during the pandemic, I got re-involved with a friend of mine that's interested in it. Dom mentioned poetry and slam poetry, because this particular friend is a haiku champion, and you can find him on Instagram. He goes by the name of IPC, and he started a group called the Funky Eye Puppets, which was a mixture of actors and non-actors, meaning trained actors and all along those lines. And we did a voice troupe on Clubhouse and other venues for a while and everything. And like I said, some of us were trained and some of us were not trained. And one of the things he tried to get us to understand was that to get into that feeling of play and that feeling of enjoying the child within us and everything, and all along those lines. Because I find that as adults, we sometimes forget the play that we had as kids and don't always want to get involved in play and everything like that. So he tried to get us to get out of our head and everything like that. So my question for Samuel and LeVar is, how do you get your feeling of play? Because you're both in high intensity fields, whether it's construction or real estate and everything like that. But I'm sure you've got to have an element of play in your life as well. So what do you do to reach into that play aspect, because I think that sometimes as adults we start encouraging kids to get into the professional world and to not spend as much time in play, even in relationships. And there's got to be an element of play in relationships as well. So what do you use to get that play kid like atmosphere in your life and everything? So I'll start with you, Samuel, but I want to hear from LeVar as well.
Yeah, I think you made a good point, Mark, that after the pandemic, there was a shift in the system, and when everybody had to be down and there was that lockdown, there was a time of self-reflection about what life is going to be. What's my purpose of being in life? What is my next step? What am I going to do with my life? Am I supposed to go to 9 to 5 every day, or there's something more, or there's something meaning to this life? So I think that was a blessing in disguise when the pandemic hit, and we've seen a shift even in the work environment when people started to work remotely. And now after some time, people don't want to return back to work because what? Now they'll be able to spend time with their family, they're able to connect with their loved ones so much, and they're able to adjust their lifestyle with spending time with their family and be able to work at the same time, that they feel that they're better off still working remotely than going back to the office. And I think that all comes of how we spend our time, how we maintain that balance and that healthy mindset. And for me, besides my work in the construction industry, I'm also a dance instructor. So I teach worshipful dancing. I teach worshipful Jewish dancing, Hebrew dancing. So I'm an avid dancer. I dance a lot. And here in British Columbia, in the parks in Vancouver, I do teach dancing steps in the community. And it's a way to unwind. It's a way of having fun, because some of these songs are upbeat. Some of these songs really get you going and turning and choreographing steps. So that is my amazing way I unwind. I and my wife, we do the teaching together, and we teach in the public parks. And every time we have a couple of students and we are dancing in the park, you see people in the park just gather around and get excited about what kind of dancing is this, and want to get to know. And some people volunteer to join to learn the steps. So that is my way of unwinding. It's so important for us to have a way in which we build our spirituality, we to build ourselves emotionally and our mind, and be in that frame of mind, so that we can be able to have that healthy balance, spending time with our family, connecting with people in the community, as well as also earning income from our day-to-day work.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you, LeVar? What do you do? Maybe you got some hobbies that we're not aware of and everything, but how do you manage that work-life balance, particularly when you're doing this high interest in community development and real estate? So what do you do for that aspect of fun?
So what I do is nowhere near as fun as what Samuel does. So I want to start out there. Actually, my grandfather taught me something. He says that he taught me that if you do what you love, you'll never go to work a day in your life. So I'm much like Carrie's husband. Excel spreadsheets turn me on and get me excited. I have an MBA in finance. So when I wake up in the morning and I'm looking at what's going on with the real estate market, when I'm looking at, investment properties or deals and things like that, I could do it 12, 13 hours a day, right? 6, 7 days a week. I have my laptop open when I'm, watching TV on a Saturday or Sunday evening. So that's fun for me, but I know I'm unique. At the same time, my second passion is youth sports. So I love to give back. So I have been, I've coached several youth football teams. We won state championships, regional championships. So I take that very seriously. And I love to give my time back to the kids like that. I get out there on that field. It's like I'm 12 again. I'm running around playing with them, and I'm way too old for that. But for me, that's how I kind of de-stress, kind of get away from it the very few times I don't want to look at an Excel spreadsheet. So
the reason I was laughing and everything is because you sound somewhat similar to my younger brother, who's got my 2 nephews, because I don't have any kids of my own, but they are very much involved in soccer. I even remember an incident. This was then when they were much younger, because they're teenagers now. They'll be 16 and 17 in August, and they'll probably even hate me telling this story. But I remember one time that they were getting involved in the game of soccer, and one of them had a fit, like a temper tantrum, and we couldn't figure out why he was having a temper tantrum. And I think it was the youngest one. I don't think it was Langston, who is Langston is the youngest one. Yeah, I think it was Langston. I don't think it was Julius. But we all, me, their grandparents, which is my parents and everything, and other people that are family friends, were all looking like, why are you having a temper tantrum? And he's looking at us like, because the game's over and I don't want to stop playing and everything. So he was a temper tantrum because he didn't want to stop the game. He wanted to continue playing and all along those lines. And their dad, my brother, is very much into the notion, speaking of play, of kind of like those Batmobile cars. They're called the Slingshots and everything like that. So he is the co-president of that particular club. As a matter of fact, they just did a food truck rodeo in a small town called Butner this past weekend and everything like that. So I did see people doing a lot of play this weekend. And Dom, you'll get a kick out of this. Another friend of mine does concerts, and he did one this weekend that was two friends did it. One was a salute to Angie Stone and Aretha Franklin, two legends that we recently lost. And the other one was on this past Saturday was a Frankie Beverly tribute band and go-go music. So it was really fun hearing people literally sing Joy and Pain and Pump Me Up. So you knew that they had been listening to those songs forever and a day because they knew those lyrics like by heart and everything like that. So I'm sure that you've even had that experience where people have known some of your songs or some of the covers that you're doing when you are performing. So what is that like as a performer to get people that are so engaged in the songs that they know your lyrics automatically and are singing along with you?
Oh, there's nothing better as a performer when you can do songs that people know and they request songs or they sing along with you. There's nothing better than that, and on top of, well, see, one of the things I found, like LeVar, and also I'm based out of Chicago sometimes. So shout out to Chicago there. And, it's one of those things. I'm a record collector as well. And so I have about 5,000 LPs of different types of my research and whatnot. So I figured out a nice balance between the work that I play on, the work and the music I do on stage compared to the music I'll listen to, which can be quite varied. So I'm always looking for those little notions. Like when I make my LPs, I try to think about what a fan of records and vinyl records would want in a record. So I think about that, and I take it into account what I would listen to. I was even telling my wife who works with me, my wife Vania, she co-manages American Songster Productions with me. Also, my radio show on WSM, American Songster Radio. She's my co-host as well. She co-wrote the liner notes on all of my records as well. So we work together a lot. We love to travel. So whenever I'm doing gigs or we're traveling to a special area, we look for different sites along the way, whether it be a touristy spot or sometimes like antique shops or great historical landmarks or whatnot. We've done that all over the world. And that's something that we take a lot of joy in. But yeah, when it comes to some of the music stuff, I'm always keeping an eye out for that new sound, especially with folk music. There are moments where you can find connecting points, almost like its own type of musical archaeology, where a song connects to another song and a piece of a sound or a style connects to something else. And that's something that I'm always looking for. And that's something that kind of goes outside of me just working. That's something I just love doing in general. So I always love making those connections and piecing together, putting the dots together and finding connecting points. Also with reading, it's one of the reasons I ended up going into the English department in university was that I just love to read. So being able to connect stories that are a part of the culture it is always a big piece of it. I remember the first time I read about an African-American musician by the name of Leslie Riddle, and that he actually traveled in the 1920s with a fellow named A.P. Carter, who would make records with his wife and his sister-in-law as the original Carter family. And they're one of the pioneering country music groups. And so there was a period of time when they traveled with this African-American performer who taught them several songs. And so when I began to read those types of stories in country music books, I started to try to find the songs that they would talk about. And that's its own type of really interesting journey, just to be able to go on a full pathway into the written texts that have been left behind of historical music, and to be able to modernize it. Because sometimes what I can do as a modern artist is that I can take a musical idea, like if a musician was a fiddler and a guitar player, but they never played both instruments, I can make an arrangement of a song that will take that musical idea and show that to the audience. So in the 21st century, then now we have an audio representation of this very sometimes complex musical ideas. Other times it can be quite simple, but just to be able to bring those juxtapositions together, those are the sort of things that I find that really move me as an artist as well. So it's sort of like a combination of the joy I feel with music, but then I can also apply that into something that I use in my works now that are past two records got nominations for Grammys, and they've done very well for what they are as modern folk music. And so those are things that I like to do as well. Like Black Cowboys was a juxtaposition of showing songs that have Black cowboy stories connected to well-known cowboy songs. Like Home on the Range has a whole story about a Black cowboy being documented by a folklorist, and that being one of the quintessential Western anthems. So I wanted to go into songs like that. But then there are also ideas of like the Buffalo Soldiers. So I created a fife and drum number that would represent the Buffalo Soldiers and things like that. And placing that all into the context of one single album, it's a wonderful creative endeavor, on top of it being just a beautiful exploration into where it can go afterward. Because the idea behind Black Cowboys too, there just wasn't an album that was that said Black Cowboys on it. And so because of that, I knew that at some point down the line, there would be a controversy where people would question, are Black cowboys an essential part of American history? And this album says yes already. And so that was part of why I wanted to make the record. So it allows for its own type of perpetual history that we can continue to have just within the general landscape. Again, music is sort of it's abstract, it's ephemeral in a way, but once it's set in place, you can't take it away, and people can't unhear what they've heard.
And not only that, but it'll probably get them to dig into the history and all along those lines. Because my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I know that there was a popular TV series that was out recently. I think it may even be in its second or third season, which is Bass Reeves. And my understanding of Bass Reeves is that many people remember the old TV show Lone Ranger, but that Bass Reeves was actually the original Lone Ranger. And all along those lines is my understanding of that particular history story. And but there might be some debate about that, but it's my understanding that Bass Reeves was actually the model behind the Lone Ranger. Even that's not the model that we see on television and all along those lines.
There's a song I got called He's a Lone Ranger that is about Bass Reeves specifically. And then I put 40 pages behind the album too. So it was also meant to be sort of an intro to just the general idea of Black cowboys, the westward expansion. And the Bass Reeves song is that one is a really fun one. I was able to kind of make a Lightning Hopkins style of blues shuffle telling the story of Bass Reeves. And yeah, it's just great to be able to do that, because now Bass Reeves is, at the time, nobody was really talking about him, but now it's amazing to see TV series. Also, there were several movies that featured Bass Reeves as a character within them, and I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Kerry, along those same lines and all along those lines, you kind of alluded to it, as did LeVar and others. But how does everybody do? I don't have to worry about it because I'm still even in my 60s in that single space. But how do you manage that work-life balance? Because I'm sure that even in your work, sometimes there are people in your family that are going like, good grief, she's working again. Can we have some time for our family and all along those lines? So I just wondering, how do you manage that work-life balance? Because I know that's something we talk about regularly here on the dinner party. So how do you and your husband manage that work-life balance? And I want to hear from the other fellows too as to how that work-life balance is managed. I think Don's got a perk of work-life balance because it sounds like his wife is also his business partner and all along those lines. But how do you manage that work-life balance?
So is that a question for me?
Yeah, this is a question for you.
Okay, because everyone's screen went black and it was swirling. And I was like, oh, what's happening here? So the nice thing is my husband's retired and I work. And so his favorite thing is our vegetable garden. We live on 7 acres and we got about a 1/4 acre of a huge vegetable garden, and he loves it. And it's really great because I have my home office. I get to do my stuff and do my thing. And he's out there tinkering in the garden with, tomatoes and jalapenos and the peppers and what we're going to grow, kale and collard greens. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait. Fresh garlic. It's amazing. That's his baby is he's got, and here's the funny thing. You're going to love this. It's so wild. He loves to grow vegetables, but he hates vegetables. He literally, it's like the only reason he'll eat a salad is because to make me happy. And I'm just like, okay, great. Yeah. And he's so good at it. We we make our own homemade pickles. I do Thai basil, pickled beets. Oh, love that stuff. Made my own pumpkin butter, all kinds. And so I think that's where we created this balance is he supports what I do and loves what I do. And I support and love what he does because I love vegetables. I could eat vegetables 24/7. So it's a really good, harmony, a mixture between, two of us. And there are moments where I'll come out of my office and he'll be like, okay, how was that interview? And I'll be like, oh, it's great, this and that. We connect. And then it's like, okay, I'm going back in and, I go back in and do my stuff. But it's really what I have found works beautiful for us is we've made this commitment that at 9:00, we reconnect. We watch a movie together. We chat. We talk. And it's really trying to find that, balance every day. And where I pencil him into my schedule because he's retired. He's got all the time in the world, but it's like, no, I want to spend time with you. And it's not just spending time. I want it to be quality time. Because as you know, like with teenagers, you could have family night, but what are they doing? They're glued to their phone. They're texting away and stuff. It's like, no, put your phone down. Let's have a conversation at the dinner table. The phone can wait. Your friends can wait. This is my time with you. I want to know all about you. What's going on with you? And so we do really honor and create that where we do come together at the dinner table and we eat and we talk. And we even used some cards one time where it's called Let's Dive Deep. We would pull a card and we'd ask each other questions. And it made dinner time fun. Really, really fun because my kid sometimes can be rather shy and kind of quiet and in his own little world. So it really helped get him out of that world and let's engage in a conversation. Like, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on that? And it made dinner time and family time so much more fun. Like you can plan a game night. That's really fun. Or let's have a movie night as a family. Let's go out to dinner one night. We do that too. Like once a month, we're all going to go out to dinner as a family and we're going to enjoy each other. And 1 month, my husband picks the place. The next month, my son picks the place. The third month, I pick the place. So we're all trying to support one another. And hey, what do we want to do?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How do you do that work-life balance, Samuel, and everything? And I can relate to the cards because definitely it used to be Scrabble, then it became Spinners, which is kind of like a form of dominoes. But anytime that we get together, particularly at my mom's house or my aunt's house, usually one of those games is going to get pulled out and there's going to be like some family time of us playing. Sometimes it can be competitive. I will say just as a light joke that this might have been the oldest nephew that he figured out the secret to being a successful game player because he won, which is rare for the youngster to win. And we kept trying to talk him into playing another rematch. And he was like, no, I won. I'm good. I don't have to play another game. I'm good. So we could talk him into another game to the next time of the next session and everything. But for that particular day, he was like, no, I won. I'm good. I don't have to play another game and everything like that. So Samuel, what do you do in terms of that work-life balance, kind of like the game nights and stuff like that Carrie was talking about?
Right. So my wife Elizabeth, she has her own online retail business that she runs from home. So she's able to work remotely. She can work from anywhere. So, and I also work remotely with my consulting business. So we're able to schedule time together. So we're always home together. She's another part of home. If she wants to go shopping, I'm able to still drive her to shopping if I'm going on business trips, going for meetings in other provinces or other cities, we're able to travel together and go for business meetings. So we are glued together, and we don't have kids yet. So we have the time each other and spend time together whilst we are doing business and we are traveling together and we're having fun. So my wife and I, we are everywhere we are able to go together, we're able to work together, and we are always at home. And we are going shopping together, we are traveling together. You always see the two of us. You always likely to see the two of us, unless I'm in a business meeting with clients. That's who might be in a hotel waiting for me or something else. So my wife and I, we always like glued together everywhere we go. We do everything together, and because of our lifestyle, because we're able to work remotely and we have our own clients and we have our own we're able to work remotely, we're able to spend time together, whether at home or wherever on the business trips together. We're still working, but we're always together. And so for me, that is being around alongside her, being with her is just my time at home. My time with my wife is just my unwinding time. Yeah.
That makes sense. What about you, LeVar? What do you do for that work-life balance? You mentioned your wife earlier as well. So what do you do for that work-life balance in terms of like making sure that you make time for her and make time for the other members of the family as well?
Gotcha. So for my wife and I, it's actually pretty easy. So we have a unique way of spending time. So she's an executive as well. So many times when I have my laptop out and I'm looking at Excel spreadsheets, she has her laptop out and she's working too. And for us, that's quality time. So a lot of my friends and family members, they would come over and be like, "What are y'all doing? Y'all working?" But we be sitting on the couch, the TV be on, and that's our quality time. And then for the kids, luckily, my wife is from the South, basically, and she loves sports. I love sports. Our kids play sports. So between us working on the couch and at youth events or youth sports events for our kids, that's all of our time. And we're both happy as we can be. So because we're doing what we love.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, I've got to tease you. Now, y'all aren't the helicopter parents are the ones that are sitting there that are always thinking what is the coach doing wrong and everything like that. Because I did have a cousin that became an athletic director and everything because he was a coach and he became an athletic director, and his principal basically had to get him away from that notion of trying to coach because, of course, he wanted to coach the coaches because he had been a coach. But, there's divisions of responsibility. So as an athletic director, he couldn't coach everything, and even though he wanted to.
Yeah. So I hopefully this is a little story that'll tell you about me. So when I was coaching my son for the first time, first of all, I didn't even want him to play football. I didn't. He wanted to play football because I was out. That's where I spent most of my time. So he came out for football. And the first year he played, I forced him to be an offensive guard. So he's today, just so you know the type of body he has or build, he was a starting high school quarterback today. But I forced him to play the offensive guard, and for an entire season, he was never allowed to touch the ball. Never. I wanted him to respect individuals who touch the ball. I wanted him to get work ethic and things of that nature. So I really use sports more as kind of, to teach discipline and focus and work ethic and things of that nature. So I am by no means a helicopter dad. My kid has the toughest route versus the easiest. So, but it builds character, and I think he's an amazing young man today. So,
yeah. Hey, Dom, did you play any sports when you were in high school or in college? And if you did any of that help you in your musical career?
Well, I was a swimmer actually all of my life. So I did the breaststroke, and I was on the relay team and on the freestyle and the intramural team as well. I did that up to about high school, and then I saw that because, with high school going into college, it's like you're really trying to get into the Olympics by that point. So I saw that I wasn't ever going to get there, but I'm really good swimmer and really always enjoyed it. So those are my sports. But, swimming teaches you to be accountable for yourself as an individual because you have to beat your own times on everything like that. So, that was something that I learned out of swimming was that you have a team effort going on, but individuals are also, it's very important because that can really make or break your team is if you can break your own time, then you can help the team advance forward. So I guess that's the thing I took away from it. My dad was a basketball player. He was a point guard. And So I always was watching the game with him. He's still watching the game every season, of course, college and professional. But yeah, like when it comes to unwinding, my wife and I, we have our little 7-year-old daughter, so that's a lot of where our time's spent right now. She's about to finish out first grade. She's really advancing at math. Like I'm the literature and book person, so I'm doing a lot to help her get her reading as sharp as it can be. But my wife is the numbers person. That's also why we work together. She's really good at organizing logistics and finance and that type of stuff. She was a CFO at one point, so it's like that's really her. She loves the spreadsheets as well. And but she's she's really my daughter's taken after her. She's like in the 99th percentile in math right now at school, so she's really advancing in a great way. For my daughter and I, she recently just got deep into Uno, so she'll just sit down and say, "Daddy, let's play Uno," and we'll run through the deck 3 or 4 times. So that's about 10 games or something like that. So she's really gotten into that. When it comes to my wife and I, we're still working on finding ultimately the quality time. We're now realizing that when our daughter's in school, that's when we can have an afternoon and find a time to go out and spend some time not working, but yet at the same time, with Zoom calls and the phone being also the place of work at the same time as an independent artist, it sometimes can be very difficult because she has to answer the logistical advance for a gig, what time, where do I need to be, booking the flights, rental cars, etc. I have to be on the creative side of it where I'm making sure that the songs are set. If there's a theme for the gig, I have to make sure that's together. And then working together, we also tend to curate exhibits as well for some of the bigger like museum type performances that I'll do. So, she's a curator for museums as well. So sometimes we'll get into some of the bigger things like artifacts. And if we have to bring things from my collection that I have a collection at Vanderbilt University. So if we have to send items over, then we do that, that type of thing. But yeah, we still are back and forth. Every other month we feel like we've got a good balance going. And then other months we're like, oh boy, we overdid it again. When was the last time we had dinner together?
Having that whole conversation, everything like that makes sense. I can relate to the track story, by the way, and everything. We're going to wind down very shortly and everything along those lines. But the reason I can relate is because I was the worst track runner ever, and I'll admit that and everything because I ran track and I was no good at it. But I was, even back in those days, I was a good networker. So I recruited the basketball players and some of the other players, and I think we won 3 out of 4 years our conference championships, and even had some athletes that did well regionally and all along those lines. We lost my senior year because I got tired of losing. I just told y'all I was the worst track runner of all time. So I recruited a friend who has since passed on because I knew I could beat Jimmy Robinson because Jimmy Robinson was a little bit bigger than I was and everything. So I recruited a friend that I knew I could beat. And I think we lost by like maybe 2 points because we didn't have anybody that knew how to do the pole vault or one of the other field events. So I guess I have to take the blame for that little bit of an ego because I was sitting there going like, I'm tired of losing. I'm tired of coming in last place and everything. And I had that same dream, Dom, of wanting to be in the Olympics and everything like that. But after a while, I gave up. I'm like, I'm not going to be a miler in the Olympics. I'm not going to be one of those famous marathon runners or anything like that. So that Olympic dream died at some point or another along those lines. But I did have that dream like you of being an Olympic athlete, but it just didn't happen and everything. One of the things that we talk about often on this show, and this will be one of the last questions as we get ready to wind down and everything, but I'll start with you, Carrie, is a lot of times we talk about on this network and this show in general, the imposter syndrome. And I know that in my own life, and like I said, I'm still single in that early 60s space and everything like that. And sometimes whether it's been relationships or jobs, because actually there is a new job that might be even coming up in my current, one of my current jobs. But I oftentimes will have that inner conversation, whether it's relationships or business. And by the time I talk myself into the job or the lady has walked out the door and everything like that. So I was just wondering, how do you deal with that inner critic, or have you even face that inner critic? Because all y'all sound like y'all are people that have self-confidence, for lack of a better term. So how did you deal with that inner critic? So I'll start with you, Carrie. How did you deal with that inner critic, whether it was in the relationships before you met your husband or whether it was in life journey?
Well, I actually work with people with that inner critic. And what I've really learned is that is the wounded part of ourself from childhood that believed I'm not good enough. I'm stupid. I'm unworthy. I'm insignificant. I don't matter. I'm not lovable. And what ends up happening is I was working with this one 16-year-old boy, and I said, I want to give you an example of what you're doing, because when you hear that negative voice, that inner critic in your mind, you're being worse than your dad, who's authoritarian. You're beating yourself up. You're telling it to shut up, leave me alone. So think about it as a little kid, and it's trying to get your attention, and you're slamming the door in its face. You're telling it to go away. I said, it's trying to get your attention for a reason. So I want you to stop because it wants your help. I want you to stop, and I want you to go inside yourself, because that's where the answer is. All the answers are in us. It's our stories, our memories. I want you to ask that little boy, what do you need from me? What do you need? Hey, why are you so angry? Why are you angry? And let the answer come up. And it was really neat to watch how this kid was able to connect to that inner critic that was so negative and to form a dialogue. And what he found out is really what he needed is to show himself more kindness, to show himself more patience, to show himself that I need to stop masking and pretending to be someone that I'm not. I need to be kinder to me. And I said, okay, so now you know what that voice is. When each time it gets mad, I want you to, stop and say, hey, buddy, we need to calm down when we're angry, because maybe I'm taking this too personally. What is it? What is it really? And it was so nice to see that he could realize that that's the voice of the past, because this kid was traumatized. That's the voice of the past that needs to be healed. So the more you acknowledge it, the more you give it what it needs, it's going to become quiet. And it did. It eventually got to the point where that inner critic stopped, because he started giving himself what he needed, which was basically grace. Give yourself some grace. We're all perfectly imperfect. Instead of thinking you messed up, you're this big disappointment, you made a mistake. No, you made an error in judgment. And that's how we all learn. There are no mistakes. It's just opportunities to learn. So learn from this and learn to go inside and heal yourself. When you're angry, ask yourself, whose voice is this? Is this my voice, or is this my dad's voice that used to yell at me all the time and make me feel stupid and incompetent? What voice is that? And then if it is your dad's voice, apologize and say, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve to be talked to that way. You didn't deserve to be treated this way. I'm going to show you compassion and kindness because I want to be a better person. And so, yes, I don't have that inner critic anymore. I don't. I can be around all kinds of dysfunctional, toxic people, and it doesn't bother me, because I created this way of looking at it is I can only change me. I can't change them. And as soon as I accept that that person's a jerk, that person's toxic or whatever, I'm good with it. I can love you, but not like you. And what I don't like is your personality, your behavior, and all that. So when I'm around these dysfunctional people, I think about it as seeds blowing in the wind. It's blowing in the wind, blowing in the wind. And if they say something that's going to trigger a reaction out of me, because that's what they want, they're kind of baiting you. They want a reaction. What I do is I let it blow on by. But here's what a lot of people do, Mark, is they grab that seed and they water it with their thoughts, anger, bitterness, resentment, egotistical, like, how dare you? And we water it and it grows roots and it festers and it creates dis-ease within our body. So we got to learn to pull out those roots. And when you're around those people that know how to trigger you and know how to bait you, remember this analogy. It is just seeds blowing in the wind, because they're not going to water it for you. We only water them ourselves. And we have a choice in every moment. So look at it as your peace of mind matters. So yeah, you can be, once you really grasp that concept of I need to accept people for who they are. I can agree to disagree. There's no more black and white. There's equality here. You know, I might think you're batshit crazy, and that's okay, because you could be that way in your own happy, wonderful world. As long as you're not hurting somebody else, so be it. Let you be free, you know, free spirit, a happy person. I might not get you, but that's okay. You know, everyone is different. Everyone has something to bring to this world. Everybody does.
Yeah,
So yeah, I don't have that negative inner critic anymore, because I healed it. I worked on it.
That makes a lot of sense. Hey, LeVar, along those same lines and everything, I'm sure because you're in a very a field that a lot of is kind of like Downsville. There are not a lot of minority developers that are out there and everything like that. So I'm sure there were a lot of people that were telling you that you were a rarity and everything. Because I know there are a couple of developers here in Durham, North Carolina, where I am. There's a African-American woman, I can't think of her name off the top of my head, that's in that field, but there are not a lot even here in this area, in our space and all along those lines. So I'm sure a lot of people were like telling you, why are you getting into this? It's a strictly quote unquote white field and everything like that. So how did you address that and all along those lines? Because both you and Samuel, I'm sure, heard that conversation that you were going into a field that is not something that people of color are into and all along those lines. So I just wondering, I'll start with you, LeVar, but I want to hear from you, Samuel, too. With that, how did you deal with that conversation?
Sure. So the conversation, I actually didn't face it as much as I thought. I saw a lot more when I was in corporate America in my early 20s and 30s, early 30s. But for me,